Coming in hotter than Dirk Benedict and a Colonial Viper, baby. It is the Man of Tomorrow here for you. And wow, so this is going to be a fun little special. It's not exactly impromptu. I mean, I thought this out. I typed this out. I worked it out. But I got a request from a tremendous patron who was interested. Actually, this is the same patron that requested the Sovryn Top 8 for the Sega Genesis. Which, by the way, I think I shared this on Twitter. How about that TurboGrafx 16 Mini coming for, or Classic, whatever they're calling it, coming from Konami? Woo! We're going to have a hell of a gaming grid this month in June 2019 when we talk about everything that's been happening at E3. Been a hell of an E3. Anyway, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Well, I mean, I guess we kind of are, because in some ways this is... Android has become a serious gaming platform. I mean, there's as many announcements of games coming to mobile and stuff coming to mobile as there were for any new console or, console exclusives and whatever else, coming down the pike as of E3 2019. But I'm not really going to get into any games. Maybe I think I did on a Q&A a while back. I did like my top 8 Android games, and I said there really wasn't enough to talk about as far as Android games, to warrant an entire episode, an entire special. However, there is enough to talk about, and this is what was requested of me, is they want to know, okay, what Android apps do you use, blah, 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 and all this. And I think you can even find it in the comment section on Zomia1.com if you're looking for the question. And so, I wrote all this up, and this is going to be, I want to get some things out of the way right in the beginning here, okay? Purely bonus content, things to get out of the way in the beginning. This is not a Dark Android special, okay? Like, I've done those in the past where I talked about the apps you want to use if you're going for full-on what at the time I would have called DApps, which is decentralization, anonymity, privacy, and security. Unfortunately, some dumbass technology, Ethereum, that would end up coming up with this idea of DApps, right? Decentralized apps. And so they kind of commandeered people call it DApps, but I think some people say DApps, whatever. They kind of commandeered my acronym, even though there's an extra P in DApps, but whatever. So I haven't used that acronym in a good long while, but that's not what this is. Okay. Now, I mean, there's some things I use here that I do use for their encryption and privacy, basis. But this is really on my day-to-day, my daily driver smartphone, Android smartphone, okay? Now, I have other Android devices that are set up very, very differently from this, okay? Now, maybe I could do specials on those, but point being is that do not come to this expecting, 100% privacy and anonymity, okay? That's not where I'm coming from. I work... Okay, I do work like outside of Sovryn Tech, obviously. And I have clients. A lot of it's freelance work, but some of it's more structured. And there's certain apps that in my perfect world, or even in my semi-perfect world, I wouldn't even dream of using. In fact, one of them I've criticized very heavily over the years. But they're here and I use them. In fact, I saw, speaking of on Twitter, I saw something funny. Zcash, which I'm a fan. Zcash they're having ZCon 1, they're calling it. They're having their own little kind of conference, whatever, convention. And I think like the lineup or the schedule or whatever is all being shared, or the speakers list maybe it was, is all being shared on a Google Doc. And a guy rightfully called out the Zcash team, saying, you're going to talk to me about privacy and you're sharing this on a fucking Google Doc? And I mean, I get it, okay? Understand. I agree with the guy complaining about using a Google Doc. Like, obviously, I support his statement all the way, okay? But I also understand that Zcash, as a company or whatever, that there is some degree, like, they interact with a lot of other companies that want to implement ZK snarks, and those other companies aren't totally on board yet with, fully open source and a lot of these other things. And so Zcash ends up using, shall we say, apps or things that make it easier for the average person, whatever. They end up doing things that might not fit in with the philosophy of what they wanted to create in the first place. I am not saying that that's 100% okay. I'm just saying I understand it. That's all that I'm saying. So, and partly because I deal with clients. I mean, folks, I got to make money too. I deal with clients that some of them, and as much as I will try and argue for them to get off of some of these platforms, I deal with clients that still end up using them. Now, fortunately, I've gotten to the point where I don't deal with any clients that require me to have a Facebook account because I don't have one. I'm not going to have one. And understand that, like, especially if you're dealing with, say, client social media, and really the last straw for that was that major, it was last September. There was that huge Facebook where like a bunch of passwords leaked and a lot of other things. That actually finally got a lot of companies saying, okay, no, we're done with Facebook. It's too risky. It's not worth it. And we're not getting the ROI on being on Facebook. That got a lot of people off of Facebook, and I'm really glad about that. So, because beforehand I still had to deal with them. I try to get people off of these things. It kind of happens, fortunately, again, like I said, the clients I deal with, I don't have to have any, deal with Facebook at all. So no Facebook apps are going to make it onto this list. And in fact, even if you're one of those people, because I know there's a lot of you, okay, and I've been there too. Even if you're one of those people who are like, yeah, okay, I don't have a Facebook account. Well, but I do have an Instagram account. Okay, there's even a way to do that without installing the Instagram app on your smartphone. And that's very simple. You run the Progressive Web app. Okay. And that works really, really well, on Android. So anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way, that this is not, the 100% privacy and security, lineup here. In fact, nothing on this is an F-Droid. This is a stock Android smartphone, everything coming off of the rootkit known as the Google Play Store, okay? This is my daily driver for dealing with the rest of the world, as they say. And my phone, particularly, I guess we might as well say this, the phone I am using this on, or that all these apps are being run on, it is a Moto X4, and it's the Android One edition. It's running Android Pie right now. I am aware that the X4, the Android One edition of the X4 is going to get Android Q. Part of the reason I have this phone is to be able to, it's something where I need to be able to report to you the real world viability of, the latest and greatest in Android. And Android One is a nice, easy way, of doing that. For a bunch of reasons. One is that I don't have to deal with the notch. I don't have to deal with the bezel-less bullshit that even Google's going to start going, with the Pixel phones and all this other stuff. It's ironic that in Android, really the most user-friendly phones are not the high-end. They're the mid-range, much like the X4. And actually, the X4 you can get for a song these days, much cheaper. But anyway, so that's where we're running on Android 9. So keep that in mind. If there are certain I know Android 9 does notifications different than Oreo does. So, there might be some advantage to some of these apps that I use that you might not see on previous versions of Android. So it's something to keep in mind. Again, I do recommend that if you are going to buy a phone, unless you're going to go Lineage OS, that you do get an Android One phone, or go ahead and get a Pixel phone, I guess, if you're that, if you want to go that far. But those are the phones that I recommend, all the way, because they get the security updates. My phone is already updated to May, the security updates of May 2019, which is pretty good considering most Android phones out there, they're probably still on some update from 2018. It's got to be horrible. So anyway, that's an important thing, getting those security updates. Talked about that many times on Sovryn Tech. That's not new to anybody probably listening to this. But let's start going down the list of Android apps. And they're not necessarily in any particular order. I guess to some degree it'll start off with some media ones. But that's, anyway, I didn't organize them in any special way. I basically just went down the list. So here we go. Brian Sovryn's Android loadout on his daily driver meant to interact with the conventional world. That might be a great, that might even be the title of the show. Brian Sovryn's Android loadout to interact with the conventional world. So we'll start it off with, frankly, what you're listening to this on. It's likely, actually, that you're using this very app to listen to this. And that is the podcast app that I use. And ever since Pocket Casts, and we talked about this, I think on a Q&A, I think we talked about it on Sovereign Tech Prime as well. Ever since Pocket Casts, which was my premier podcast app for years, just for years and years and years, easily my favorite one. Ever since, was it version 7 that they went up to and they changed their whole UI and whatever. And of course, we all know that NPR bought Pocket Casts, blah, blah, blah. When they switched to version 7, it was a nice alignment of where I was switching over Sovereign Tech to Zomia ONE, to becoming a whole network. And it was a prime time for me to start using a different podcast app. And I ended up using the one that is actually hosting my network, that being Podbean itself. The Podbean app, I know there have been some complaints by Sovereign Tech patrons, by Zomia ONE patrons, underground members, that, there's certain issues with it. I know there have been issues with like the Podbean website, which allows you to play things through an HTML5 player and all this. But regardless of that, the Podbean app overall, for me, it has done some fluky stuff here and there, particularly the way that it's handled Bluetooth. So like when I'm at the gym, I do use Bluetooth headphones. And there's a time where it seems like the Podbean app, it's weird, if you had it connected to Bluetooth, and then so I use Bluetooth headphones at the gym, but everywhere else I use a, hardline headphones. Okay. Fortunately, the Moto X4 actually has a 1/8 jack on it because, they're cowards, right? Because they didn't do courage, which is bullshit because Apple, they're cowards too. just look at all the devices they came out with. They have 1/8 jack still, new ones. Anyway, so yeah, it will like crash because of that Bluetooth issue. I don't know what the fuck that is, but that might have something more to do with the Android 9 than it does the actual Podbean app. I don't know. But I've been very pleased with the Podbean app. If I listen to, frankly, I can admit this. Maybe if I listen to as many podcasts as I used to, like years ago, I listened to like 20 some stupid amount of podcasts. Like I'd get up first thing in the morning and I'd have a podcast going and I'd have them going all day long. I just listened to podcasts constantly. It was so insane. I'm not that way anymore. Now I listen to 3 or 4, and even those can be infrequent. I'll listen to Security Now all the time. I listen to Eddie Trunk's show. But those are kind of the big 2 that I will listen to on the regular. Everything else is kind of extra. So if I had to manage like a huge podcast library, I don't know, maybe Podbean wouldn't work so well for me then, but it absolutely does the job for what I do as far as podcasting goes. And obviously the feature set of where I can support other podcasts or where I can get exclusive content works far better than Patreon does. The Patreon app, by the way, I do not have that installed on this smartphone. I don't have the Patreon app installed on anything. I understand that they fixed the app pretty dramatically a couple weeks ago to where a lot of the streaming stuff really works. That was not always true in the past, and that's another reason that I was getting away from Patreon, just one of many. But I understand that they fixed that a lot. But just in case you're wondering, no, I don't have the Patreon app on here at all. I really would love if everybody would get switched over to the Podbean account, or to Zomia ONE on Podbean, and we're supporting that way. Even though, admittedly, I do make a little because Podbean takes a greater cut of what I make, through the patron program on Podbean. It's still better than what. Feature set wise and a lot of the other conveniences, it's still better than what was going on with Patreon, even though Patreon would give me a much better cut as far as things go. Anyway, I use the Podbean app and 99% of the time it works beautifully. There's that funny Bluetooth issue sometimes, but generally when I go to the gym, I'm not listening to podcasts anyway, so that usually doesn't even, it's not an issue. However, when I am at the gym, what I am listening to most of the time is music. And so I have kind of a hybrid solution, and there's a big conversation to have around some of this, but I'm going to just keep it simple here just to let you know what apps I use. I do have Plex, and I will use Plex often. Plex can sometimes be a little funny. The Plex app is nice because actually if you're running Plex on other machines, you generally don't run like the media server of Plex off of an Android device. Look, you just don't. But you can like update the other apps, like your media server that's on a whole other machine remotely through the Android app, which I think is really nice. I do like being able to do that. But Plex has a great UI. It really does. My only problem with Plex as far as music goes is I put like album names, like, I'm crazy about MP3 tags. Like I do all my own MP3 tagging and everything when I get music. Even when I buy it off of Amazon, I have to fix their fucking, we're at whatever store I happen to buy it off of. Sometimes you can only get certain things off of Amazon. I still have to like fix their MP3 tags. They fuck it up. Anyway, like if the album has a really long name and say it's like a 2-disc and I put disc 1 in Plex on Android, I can't see, no matter what I do, I can't see which disc I'm looking at. And the order that Plex will put the albums in sometimes is a little weird. So I do have minor complaints around that. But most apps work that way, and it kind of sucks. Why they can't just scroll a little bit, I have no fucking idea, because that'd just be the easiest thing to do. Now, if you're using a Plex media player on a desktop, generally you can just hold the mouse over it, and then it'll tell you like the full title of what's there, even when that won't show it all to you. But you can't really do that on Android, so that's kind of annoying. But overall, Plex works very well. For my media serving needs. I do not use there are no streaming services as far as music goes on this list. You're not going to hear Spotify. You're not going to hear any of that horseshit. I stream my own stuff. It's the only thing I trust. I have used streaming services over the years that allow me to upload my custom music, which I have a lot of. I have a lot of very rare music, stuff that got real releases back in the day, and Google or whoever will fuck it up. And we've heard plenty of the horror stories around Apple Music or iTunes Match or whatever they call that, even though iTunes is dead now. So I take it upon myself, and Plex works great. Now, local-wise, I have PowerAmp, which if you're just going to do local music, which is totally viable, especially like with the Moto X4, you can put a 128 gig micro SD card in that thing, and you can just load that up with music. And I mean, you have as much as what could be put on a classic iPod back in the day. And you can be in really good shape. And if you're going to do it locally, I mean, now the Plex app can actually download music offline and keep it offline for you, like a lot of streaming services can now, because they found out, well, the cloud isn't everywhere as much as we hoped it was. Anyway, you can do that way too, but PowerAmp is my total recommendation for playing of local music. VLC can do it too, and VLC is on this list. But PowerAmp is really, I mean, that has a great UI as well. Very touch-oriented UI, as to where you can see that Plex is kind of thinking, well, its design is meant to look similar across platforms, desktop or otherwise, or mobile, as to where PowerAmp is totally designed for mobile, and it works really well. I recommend the paid-for apps of both of those, not Plex Pass, but there's just like a paid-for version of Plex where you get a lot more features. PowerAmp has a pro version. I recommend both of those, and it works very, very well, very slick. Especially PowerAmp. PowerAmp has a great feature of volume normalization too that I like. That doesn't always work well in apps, but PowerAmp does a great job of that. And it just has so many customizing features. PowerAmp is so powerful, no pun intended. I totally recommend that. Twitter. I have the official Twitter app. I'm not using the PWA. I have the official Twitter app on there. I could use the PWA, I suppose. But part of the reason I use the Twitter app is because it has the, notify about tweets. There are certain news sources that I follow where I want to know what's going on, and I want to get all of their tweets, and I can get them, and that's why I use the Twitter app. Even when I wasn't active on Twitter, I would have the Twitter app installed basically for that. It worked like almost like my RSS feed, basically. And it's not like, I mean, you could say, well, can't you just find some kind of RSS app like Feedly or something like that? Yeah, but some of these news sources actually literally tweet stuff that are just tweets, not links. And those are as much news as any story that they could write. So, getting their tweets is important for me as a tech journalist. So I that's part of the reason I have the Twitter app. And of course, now I do engage a little bit on Twitter. You're welcome to engage with me if you want. And I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future. I've been off and on with a lot of this stuff, but this is one where I really don't see it changing. So anyway, that's there. I do use that. That's my only social media app on this whole fucking thing. On this, even on my daily driver, that's the only one that I allow. Next, this isn't exactly social media. Some people might want to claim it as such. This is one that I have to use for other clients. I fucking hate this app. I hate this service. It's eating the world in a very real way. I can't stand that people use this so much. But Slack, I have the Slack app on here. Honestly, the app stinks. Like, it really, really stinks. The app is, I mean, it's nice that it has a dark mode now, but the app is, like, notifications don't come through. And this is part of what I hate, is that the app is really, really rough. It's really bad about not sending notifications. And yet, a lot of businesses, especially small teams, businesses, and startups, they rely upon Slack. In fact, we were even talking about Zcash. I know Zcash has used Slack. I hate this app. And it's so closed source. It's so bad. God damn it. One day, I had like a year where I was really ripping on Slack and trying to get people from trying to get people to get away from it. I'm still trying to do that. I'm not talking about it as much on the show, but fuck that fucking app. God damn it. It's horrible. But I have it on my daily driver, so it's there. And yay for dark mode, I guess. But, of course, that's not even in the desktop client, which is actually, frankly, where I really want it. Because I don't engage much with Slack on my mobile device. It's only if I'm, away from the house or something that I end up doing that. But anyway, wow, we got to hurry up because this is going to go 2 hours. I have like 50 apps to get through, and if I don't just start blazing through them, we're going to be here for a while. So Slack, fuck Slack, but whatever, it's there. Next one, here's another little bit of media consumption. Audible, the Audible app, of course, from Amazon. I have an Audible account. I've had an Audible account forever, even before there was an Amazon, or even before they were owned by Amazon. It's a fine app. There are better audiobook apps available for Android, especially. However, if it's an Audible book, that's where you're at. And I consume so many books. There's, on my smartphone, half of the books are, ones that perhaps I've torrented, or, gotten from the public library, I guess you should say. Or half of them are ones, or, half of them are from Audible. So, there's a mixture there, okay? But the thing is that I go through, the reason that there's that half and half, and there's so many, is I go through so many audiobooks that I really don't have the time to, and eventually I do this when I have, like, the time to do it. But to get through the books as quickly as possible, especially like when a new Star Wars book comes out, right? Because I pre-order all of those on Audible. It's half the reason I have Audible still. But anyway, I have to, listen to those so quickly, so that way I can review them, think about them, chew on them. And if I have to listen to them again, I do, or whatever, because, to do the show TIE Fighter Renegades. I don't have the time to go through the just ass backwards process of getting those, stripping the DRM from them. Eventually I will. Usually by the time I would even get around to it, somebody has put them up on a torrent site anyway, and so I'll just download them. But a lot of audiobooks I have to act very quickly upon and read very quickly. So I have the Audible app. It works pretty well. The one thing that I wish they would add on is the ability to increase the overall volume of obviously you can turn up the volume on your smartphone, but the overall volume of because audiobooks seem to have a lower volume than a lot of music does. We'll get into, maybe I'll just mention it now because I know it's much further down the list. So the other audiobook app that I use the Audible app. Again, it works for what it does. It does the job. The other audiobook app that I use is Smart Audiobook Player, and I've been using this for years. And I can just torrent, I can just torrent something, down from like audiobookbay.nl, and I can listen to it. I put it into my Smart Audiobook Player folder, and I can just start listening to it right away. I use Ttorrent to download it on the phone, and instantly away I go. Now, Smart Audiobook Player has the feature that I mentioned where you can increase the volume. It also has an equalizer feature, which can be pretty nice for certain books, because some books have like a lot of music in them and special effects. They're more audio theater. And then there's books where, I don't know, maybe it's like I have some classic audiobooks that were on tape. Okay, that Audible doesn't have, like Voyage of the Space Beagle from A.E. Van Vogt and some other ones where, having all of having the equalizer options and the volume options within the audiobook player itself that work independently of the rest of the Android operating system. Oh, it's very handy because it makes those books listenable again, because, well, if you ever listen to audiobooks on tape, on audio cassette, you know what I'm talking about. You know the kind of quality that we're dealing with, and any way to enhance that and bring that up is just, that's a total win. So smart audiobook player. So we have Audible and smart audiobook player. That's how I handle my audiobooks on my smartphone. Let's go next to the Atom app, ATOM. The Atom app is, obviously I am a cinephile. As I get older, the more I actually do not enjoy newer movies and the more that I go backwards in time watching classic films. But the nice thing is that where I'm at on Ice Planet Zero right now, or New Hampshire, there are some very nice movie theaters around that will do major events that normally you only get in bigger cities, like, say, Boston or New York or LA or something like this. And so there is a company called Fandom Events who they will put like classic movies in theaters. Like recently, Ellen and I went and saw all of the Batman movies, right? Or the original Batman quadrilogy. That was put on by, I think is it Fathom or Fandom? I think it's Fandom Events. Anyway, you can buy tickets for those events through the Atom app, and you can buy them well ahead of time. Like I already have tickets for, I think in October, end of October, they are going to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Alien. They are going to put Alien back in theaters, from 79. And I ordered the tickets for that like over a month ago, and right in the Atom app. And it's nice because it'll send you a text message, with a QR code that you just go into the theater, you scan it, and away you go. So that's one of the things where it's handy, right? It's a handy thing. And if I wanted to, and I've talked about this, I think, on other Q&As, where, you can just be at dinner, and if you need to get tickets, movie tickets for even something modern, you can get it right through the Atom app. So I really enjoy that just for my movie going pleasure, shall we say. So, all right, yeah, ATOM, the Atom app. Next, Booking.com. When I am traveling, going to various shows and a lot of other things that I end up having to do for work for the network or just for a good time. Booking.com, of course, you've probably heard the ad on the Hard and Fast podcast for Booking.com. Seriously, it's great. It just makes my life very, very simple. I can easily just do it on the website, but having the mobile app there in case there's trouble when you actually go to the hotel or whatever is very, very handy. So Booking.com is what I use as far as that goes. A app that I don't get to use as much as I want, and in fact, I saw the first update for this in, probably months, maybe even a year. It had been a while. Even though this app is long but out of beta now, the Briar app, Briar, Briar. This is a messaging app that can work without a data connection. It'll just use local, it'll use Wi-Fi direct or it'll use Bluetooth. And it ports everything through Tor, but it is a messaging app, and it's a damn good one. It will drain the fuck out of your battery, unfortunately, partly because of that Tor capability. But I really, really love this app, and I wish it would get used more. The thing is that unless you're going to share private keys over Skype, or share keys, not private keys, public keys, like over a Skype video chat or some kind of video chat, you have to, the person has to be right there in front of you for Briar to really work. So that can be a little bit, of a pain in the ass. Anyway, I could do a whole segment on the Briar app, and I have, actually, in the past on Sovereign Tech, because I really think that this, whether it's this app or something that just implements communication in the way that this app does, either way, it's the future, okay? Whether it's the abstract notion or the app itself. I really, really, really love the Briar app. And the fact that you have to meet them in person to verify that that's them, that's only a good thing. That's also the reason why it hasn't taken off yet, but that's frankly a good thing. Okay, so let's get into another app here, my calculator app. And what I actually use for this now, part of the reason I started using this app, it's because it has a programmer's calculator, which is so handy. And those can be so expensive if you have to buy them like separately, but this app only costs a couple bucks. But the other reason that I got it is, well, honestly, it has a dark mode, and it's had different themes for the calculator for a very long time. Now, the stock Android calculator app from Google now has a dark mode, so maybe that's just enough addition for you, and that works very well. I do hate that searing white. I'm not saying dark mode is the game-changing thing to impress investors that a lot of these tech giants and journalists would have you believe, but it is. I do like it a lot. Because again, I don't need to see that bright, blinding light in my face. Anyway, I use NeoCal. NeoCal. It has so many different types of calculators that you can even like flip through as you open the app, and the theming of it is really, really slick. I love NeoCal. It might even be the first app that I have installed as late. So when I get a new device. So NeoCal, big fan. Calendar. I do not use Google Calendar. I use Business Calendar 2, and I've been using that for a very long time, partly because it lets you create a client or a local calendar that's just on your Android device, which that is not common. Usually you have to attach to some kind of account. With NeoCal, you don't, and you can just export the calendar, and it works like if you put it into Thunderbird or wherever. It works anywhere you put it. So I really love that for my calendar app. And also another thing where it's had dark mode for years, and it just, saves my eyes. I really, really love it. Why don't I go ahead and toss in a couple of what are somewhat of a game here. Now, the first one is it's just chess by AI Factory Limited. This is another one of the very early apps that I install on my daily driver smartphone. As far as I know, this is like the top chess app on Google Play. There's a pay-for version that gets rid of the ads, gives you a couple other little features. I think it's totally worth it. I have been playing this chess game for years. Big fan of chess. So, to have this always sharpen my skills, it does the job, and it has multiplayer too, which is really nice. And that's like online multiplayer as well as local multiplayer. You can do that. There's different ways you can even configure it. It's really cool. I love this game, so I totally recommend it. I don't mind putting it on here. I don't know if I put that in my Sovryn top 8, because it's not like a super exciting video game, right? Or whatever phrase you want to use for that. But you get my point. But it works very, very well. The other one is just an app called Dice. And this is basically an app, and I think it was like $4 when I got it. It's basically an app that gives you varying sets of, role-playing die, more or less. You get D20, D6s, whatever you want, as much as you want. It sets it all up, and it's very simple. It looks nice, and it does the job. So I keep that around. Now, the next app is Dictionary Premium. It's amazing how much time I find myself spending in this app, not even necessarily looking up words. It has a great thesaurus feature. It has a nice little flip switch where you can switch between thesaurus or dictionary. It's handy all the time. That's why I always, have it. And I have the premium version that allows for offline functionality and some other things. But they'll have a word of the day, and they have a lot of interesting articles. It's actually just a really cool app to have on hand. Speaking of words or learning words, Duolingo. Oh yeah, I do have that. I've been learning French for some time, and well, everybody knows what Duolingo is, so that's a handy one. I do have DuckDuckGo on this device for doing some private searches here and there. I also do have the non-alpha Tor Browser on there as well. I actually, personally, I don't like the new DuckDuckGo app. I like the older search style version of the app, not the one that was just trying to be a glorified web browser. But whatever, I have it there, I put it there. The next one is Easy Voice Recorder. Now, I haven't really done this. I've done it a couple times in the past, but I've never really done it on the regular, where I needed to record a podcast and maybe even do a little editing and all this on my smartphone. Easy Voice Recorder is easily the best app on Android for doing that. There's no really great sound editing solution for Android. I wish Audacity would just get ported to Android in a usable way. But, this is where iOS really does shine. because iOS has GarageBand on it, and it has more or less a full version of GarageBand on it. And I mean, that's just awesome. GarageBand is great. I have nothing bad to say about that. It's definitely it might be the biggest point where I'm jealous of iOS users, because GarageBand is so great. But Easy Voice Recorder, I've used it here and there. It does the job, and it allows for some basic editing, which is kind of nice. The next app is Fastmail, which the Fastmail app, of course, my SovrynTech.com, all of that is through Fastmail. The Fastmail app is really just a skinned implementation of Chrome, basically, that, it's nice. It has notifications that work very well. I'll admit, I wish it had a dark mode. It has the Notes app is now very handy within that, because a lot of people don't realize just how many different features Fastmail offers you. There is like Notes functionality, that's pretty handy. In fact, I've been using that a lot more than I've been using Simplenote as late, which is another app that I would install often. In fact, I'll mention that here. Simplenote is cool because it has a great desktop app, has a great web app, and the mobile app, the Android app specifically, allows you to lock out the notes, which is pretty handy. And again, it's cross-platform, and it's run by the guys, it's by Automatic, the guys that do WordPress. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of WordPress, that's for sure. So Simplenote, that's kind of how I got onto using Simplenote. Very handy, and they've added in like versioning and a lot of other features over the past couple of years that have been pretty slick. Next, Files. That's the Files app by Google. This is a no-brainer. Android, if you're using an Android-maintained version of Google, you might as well use the Files app. Do not use E3 File Explorer anymore. I've already talked about that on Sovryn Tech. The Google Files app is great. It automatically recommends when to do like a cleaning of cache. In fact, because of the Google Files app, I don't even install SDMade anymore on newer versions of Android. Basically anything from, really Android Pie and up, I used to install SDMade to do a lot of the cleaning of cache and a lot of this other stuff and like optimize file systems and everything. Google Files does all of that. And it's also a pretty good file manager that frankly just gets better. And it has a lot of nice, in fact, like it has the automatic ability. I just discovered this the other day. It might even be a new feature where you can like flip up through files, through Google Files, and you'll find where if you have a phone that also has an SD card in it, you'll find your photos that are stored on the phone, and it will give you the option to automatically store them all onto your SD card, like transfer them all to your SD card, which I thought was pretty nice. There's some photo apps or some camera apps that will allow you to automatically save to the SD card. That's great too, but it's nice that Files has that feature. So Google Files, absolutely. Again, if you're using a Google implementation of Android, there's no reason not to use Files. Gallery. This is just basically open gallery. I don't like Google Photos because, in fact, it's funny. So I think in July, Google Photos and Google Drive, they used to have kind of a synergistic relationship, or one could store to the other. And Google is putting an end to that, apparently because it was confusing people which ones get deleted and which is where. I'll be honest with you, and obviously I'm not an idiot. Not when it comes to tech anyway. And I get terribly confused with Google Photos. It makes no fucking sense to me. I look at the app and I just go cross-eyed because it seems like it's trying to do so much. All I want is a good, simple photos manager. So Simple Gallery, which will just show up as gallery after you install it, by Simple Mobile Tools. This is a great little group of devs where they have so many apps. I recommend all of their apps. A lot of them have paid versions. I recommend going with those. It's all, really open source stuff. It allows you to lock your photo gallery either with fingerprint or passcode, or PIN code. I love this gallery app. Just fantastic. So, and actually the Notes app from Simple Mobile Tools is actually one of the best text editors on Android, in my opinion. And it's nice how you can really alter in all of Simple Mobile Tools apps, you can alter the color of the app all the way. Like I can write with their Notes app, I can write in like with a black background and green text right on my smartphone. I love that. fuck do I love that. And then when I export it as a text file, it just looks like any other text file, regardless of the coloration of the app. So big fan of what Simple Mobile Tools put out there, but their gallery app is a must-have in my opinion. Green Wallet by Blockstream. Green Wallet originally was it greenwallet.io or whatever years ago. It is one of the original wallets that I would recommend on Android, including Mycelium. I use Green Wallet because it allows for a viewing mode of my Trezor hardware wallet, which is really, really handy to have that. But also Green Wallet has been, or what was it, greenaddress.it might have been the original name of it, I forget. But anyway, Blockstream ended up taking that over, and rightfully so, because it was a great wallet, very well done, and I recommend this one with no problem. Mycelium as well is a great Bitcoin wallet if you want to go with that. IRC, it's just Android IRC is the name of it, and that's the IRC client that I use. That's pretty self-explanatory. Lastpass, I do have Lastpass partly because of clients, and also for some ease of what I use and what I have to share with other people. The Lastpass app on Android is brilliantly done. OsmAnd Plus, in fact, is a great open source map app. It uses the that's where the awesome comes from, OSM and basically means OpenStreetMaps Android. I always call it OsmAnd though. But I use that as my map app most of the time. You can't uninstall Google Maps on a good vanilla installation of Android, particularly with Android One. And, Google Maps has implemented a lot of interesting new features that other ones like Waze have had already. Obviously, Waze is owned by Google now, but I still like using OpenStreetMaps when most of the time it does make sense and it works very well, and I go for that. As far as a text messaging SMS app, I just use Messages. The Messages app from Android, there's so many. They're trying to implement like with RTS and some other things, they're trying to implement so many new technologies into SMS, and SMS is really the chat functionality that Google is now hanging their hat on after they have failed over and over again. The Messages app just comes with Android and it just works, and also if you want the web version of it, where you just go to, messages.android.com or whatever. That works very well. The handshake between the two devices works very well. I just use that, and I rarely use SMS anyway. So what the fuck ever. If Google's seeing it, anyone's going to see it. It's SMS. So I don't really give a shit. But yeah, I just use that. I still to this day, and I've experimented with it in the past, I still don't use Signal as my SMS client. But again, I think there's a lot of things that people are going to, particularly Google's trying to improve with SMS. So sticking with Messages, which is the only one that's really taking advantage of a lot of that, you might as well. And a lot of manufacturers, phone manufacturers, are discontinuing their own SMS clients. So Messages is becoming du jour anyway. Next. Well, here's something that I use to read comic books or PDF files or even EPUBs if they're not through the Kindle app. That is Moon. It's Moon Plus is the name of it, but the Moon Plus reader. And I love this app. This is another one where I've just been using it for years. It is the old standby. You can buy the premium version of it, and it really, really does the job. It's great with comic books too, with CBR files and CBZ files. Great zoom options. It's very, very nice. I love it. I do now. Something people might be asking me is, do I use a launcher of any kind? Do I use an alternative launcher to what comes with Android One? There's times where I have, and there's times where I haven't. I am again using a custom launcher. I'm using Nova Launcher. The reason is that with Android 9, they forced the fucking Google search bar on you again. I hate that thing. And it's just this bright white. They couldn't even put it in dark mode. It's just this bright white bar that'll just blind you. I can't fucking stand it. So I use Nova Launcher to get rid of that. But that's really the only reason I use Nova Launcher. Otherwise, the stock launcher for Android would be fine. I hate that Google search bar. I just don't want it. So I put on Nova Launcher. OpenKeychain. This is a handy thing for handling, PGP messages and all that. Now, you can use this with Canine Mail, which is a great definitely the best mail client overall on Android. Gmail, does what it does, but it's Gmail. But I really do like K9 Mail. You can use OpenKeychain to automatically sync and decrypt messages in K9 Mail, but you could also just as easily copy in the message into OpenKeychain, just the app itself, and then decrypt it there without having to install K9 Mail. And there's varying reasons for arguments around this. One of them being, with the amount of mail that I get, it would fill up my phone in pretty short order, and I don't want to delete it. That's partly why I use the Fastmail app, because the Fastmail app, just does everything. Well, it's it's not POP3, right? So it just does everything on their servers, and that's fine with me. In this case, on a smartphone, that's okay. That makes sense. Do I have email accounts where, you better believe I use K9 Mail on whatever platform, or, I'm using something where it's all locally stored? Of course I do. But for the apps that face the conventional world as we know it, I don't need to go through that. and I'm not going to. So OpenKeychain, that's handy for handling all of your PGP needs. I could do a huge breakdown around that, but just check it out. You're going to see all the features and you're going to love it. Riot.im, I do have that on my phone, though I don't leave it open often. Then there's also, it's just a great chat app that has all the features: video chatting, phone, or, voice chatting, grouping. I mean, Riot.im is really handy. I've talked about it on the show in the past. I do have that on there. Telegram. I have Telegram. I do use Telegram still quite a bit. In the crypto space, it is just the thing that you fucking use. I know about there's the DDoS attack. Apparently it was from China, having to do with activism in Hong Kong against Telegram. That didn't crack any of Telegram's encryption. I'm not saying Telegram's encryption is great, but yeah, Telegram, it's amazing how much this gets used around the world, and it sure as fuck, I'd rather talk to people on Telegram than have them think that it's okay to use WhatsApp or SMS or go down some other things. And I've mentioned before that Signal has a couple of issues. One of them is, and I'm not saying that this is wrong, I'm just saying that if you have a smartphone that doesn't have a shit ton of storage on it, this becomes a problem. If you share a lot of media over Signal, Signal holds on to that, and if you make backups, you can end up with a multi-gig backup file for Signal, and that can be a problem for a lot of people. So, using Telegram, it's not as perfectly implemented as Signal by no means, and the encryption is not as good. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying that it is as good, okay? But for a lot of people, I get it where the argument for Telegram exists, and maybe not so much for Signal. But then also the next app on the list is, yes, of course I use Signal. I use Signal a lot. There are certain people who will only talk to me on Signal. Honestly, a lot of the things I want to get done with the network, with Zomia ONE and all that, a lot of the communications I do for that, I amazingly find myself on Telegram having to do that. So Telegram is still totally viable, still totally worthwhile. If anything, it is just a easy alternative to get a lot of people jumping ship from the tech giants, in my opinion. So I am all about Telegram. That's fine. And of course, I'm all about Signal. No problem recommending that. The other problem with Signal, not just the backup files or, issues with sharing media and all this. The other problem with Signal is the phone number thing. And Telegram now lets you actually hide phone numbers. So that's not so much of an issue anymore. But anyway, that's there. So, and I get it. I know I've talked about it on the show. I've given the reasons why it makes sense that Signal uses telephone numbers for easy authentication. I know. I understand. That doesn't mean it's not. That doesn't mean it's still not imperfect. Okay. So I'm not knocking Signal. Use Signal. Please use Signal. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying that there are arguments for some other, for having a couple other messaging apps in all of this. And I already mentioned Simplenote. Already talked to you about that, so we don't have to go there. More messaging. Yeah, Skype. There's people that just Skype. It's what you use. When you have clients, that's how they roll. You get it. Just like the same reason that Duo and you can't uninstall Duo anyway, but why Duo or Hangouts would be on the phone, same score. We talked about Smart Audiobook Player already. Stellarium. Stellarium is a very fun, it's an astronomy app, and it lets you look at the sky and identify different stars and all this stuff. what was it? Was it SkyMap or whatever? The one that Google spun end of life and then spun out, and like an open source team took it over. That's a great one too. But Stellarium is very nice. The features, and really, it'll give you a great history lesson, a great school lesson when it comes to astronomy. I really love that app. I mean, it's so much more than just looking up and identifying what star is there. It's really slick. Already mentioned that I have the Tor browser on here. Ticketmaster. I do use the Ticketmaster app. Same reason like why I use the Atom app. It's just easy to, when you're thinking about it, and you maybe you just saw a show and you're like, you saw an ad for another show while you were at this venue, and you're like, oh shit, I got to get tickets for that. I got to go see Iron Maiden or whatever. And you can just order your tickets right there. So it's very handy for that sort of thing. Wire. This is another messaging app that is kind of like Telegram. It's full featured, it has grouping, it has a lot of these other things, it has video calls, voice calls, has cross-platform sync, though that it's not as odd as like Signal, which I'm not saying it's a problem with Signal, where Signal, like when you get Signal for desktop, you won't see your entire history on your new desktop implementation of Signal like you will on your mobile device. With Telegram, you see, as long as it wasn't a secret chat, you see everything you've ever said on Telegram when you install a desktop client on your laptop or whatever, from what you're doing on mobile or wherever you're doing it from. With Wire, there's a certain amount of time where after a certain amount of time, if you haven't really used Wire, it will auto delete, or it'll say, well, this installation of Wire is very new, so we're not going to show you the complete history. So it's kind of weird about that. I've had problems getting notifications from Wire. I'm not a fan of the app. Like there's little, and they're facing more enterprise these days anyway, more enterprise space. I know there's people who are trying to make it take off, especially in the Free State project. It just never clicked with me. It never really seemed to, and it runs into those same notification problems, which I kind of wonder if there's an issue with Android there, or like because Slack runs into the same thing, and a lot of other ones that seem to be more enterprise facing clients seem to run into these kinds of issues. I don't know. But anyway, after that, here's a little security for you. Of course, the Yubico Authenticator. This is my 2FA client because I have my YubiKey at all times, and my phone has NFC, so the phone just detects the NFC of my YubiKey, and then it gives me all of my one-time pins for the various services that I have that set up for. Very, very nice. I really love the Yubico Authenticator. That's another one where I install that very quickly, and it's great because unlike other authentication apps, 2FA apps, this is one where I don't have to, rescan all of my private keys, and all this stuff, for the various services and sites that I have 2FA activated on. This is one where it's the YubiKey that's holding all the keys. And so, it doesn't matter how many devices I install this on. I could have Yubico Authenticator on my Nexus 7, on my Moto X4, on my Lineage OS phone or whatever, and I can just, bloop, I just scan the NFC and away it goes. I love that. Yubico Authenticator is such a great thing to have. Even just for that, if you're the kind of person that changes phones a lot, that way you don't have to reinstall all your, and you don't have to use Authy or anything like that. You don't have to reinstall your, reload all of your 2FA keys, pins. It's so nice. So Yubico Authenticator, one of the most recommended apps I could give you as far as Android goes. Wikipedia. I use the Wikipedia app. It's nice. That's pretty self-explanatory, especially because of, honestly, dark mode, because you're up late at night going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole. You know how that works. Dark mode's nice for that. VLC. Mentioned that earlier. VLC player is tremendous. It can play all the music maybe that you have on there, but its real winning ability is with video, because it can play videos in the background and just as audio, and it can play it with your screen off, so you can listen to, I don't know, maybe you want to listen to The Day the Universe Changed, right, with James Burke. I love that fucking documentary series. Still important to this day, just like Carl Sagan's Cosmos. You can listen to them in the background just like it was an audio file. It's so great. I know YouTube Premium does that, with YouTube videos, but this does it locally, and it just does it so well. Totally recommended. Ttorrent. I've mentioned this recently on Q&As. Ttorrent or Ttorrent Pro if you want to pay for it. Ttorrent is the best. It is the premier torrent client for Android. It does torrents so well. I've already talked about it before. You just want to jump on this one if you're going to do any torrenting on your Android device. Another one I do have for a VPN. Now, here's the thing. So without Google Fi, I have been using Google Fi for a little while and been testing it. I'm going to do a show in review of Google Fi and whether or not it's viable. Okay. But I've been messing with it. Google Fi has a built-in VPN service, obviously from Google, and it runs at all times, whether you're on LTE or if you're on Wi-Fi. Okay, the Google Fi VPN runs at all times, and it comes at a data cost, which Google warns you about, right? Because with Google Fi, it's a la carte. You pay per gig, okay, that you use. And I always have my Google Fi VPN, on. Now, part of the reason that Google Fi has their VPN on even when LTE is going is because, well, Google Fi is just piggybacking off of T-Mobile and Sprint. They don't need T-Mobile and Sprint seeing what you're doing either. And so, granted, since it's going to Google servers, Google could give them that data if they wanted to anyway. But I have that always running because it works so well with Google Fi. However, if I wasn't using Google Fi, I have private internet access. I have their VPN app, which works very well in Android, especially because you can put it up in your, top like with your quick actions when you scroll down the top bar. And you could just turn it on instantly, or hell, you could just leave it on. And the private internet access VPN you do see some pretty fair battery drain, which I'm impressed with the Google Fi VPN that you don't really see that. But I mean, I'm not surprised either because it's Google and Android's their operating system. But yeah, the private internet access VPN app I really, really like. And I use that on other devices that aren't Google Fi based at all. That's still my go-to. So, I mean, a little funny app that I do have like I'm not part of the Netflix cult, but I do have the CBS All Access app on there. I use that. That works very well. There's a lot of little apps like that. I have the, another one. I'm a member of Stargate Command, which is the official from MGM, the official Stargate app. And it's actually it's a Stargate streaming service. So you can watch every episode of Stargate. You can watch all the movies. You can actually read all the comic books. You can read some of the books. There's social forums on there, social features and all this stuff. I have little apps like that on there. But aside from those, there's my loadout. I do have I have the Steam app for the Steam Guard 2-factor authentication. I have the Blizzard app that does the same thing. I have a lot of those little ones that have to do with gaming. Or streaming some degree of videos like with CBS, but that's really it. So there is my Android roundup, about 50 apps or so that you got recommended here. I'll put a full list in the show notes, just so you can look them up and you don't just have to trust my voice on it. But yeah, this went about an hour. That's pretty good. We started to blaze through them more towards the end. The big stuff was kind of at the top. Of course, they're the first ones that I think of and that I use really the most. Again, I would love to, I'd love to live in a world, and hopefully we'll get there, where we're downloading all of our apps from F-Droid, Google's not running the operating system. I mean, blah, 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 the whole dark Android, ethos. I want that to become more of a thing. Maybe I'll do another episode, I'll do a dark Android refresher, as it were. I still have 2 dark Android books that I'm actually writing at this moment. Okay. So those, and they're for different things. Those have to, I want those to come out too, but doing a podcast for the patrons, that just kind of lay out, okay, this is what a dark Android device looks like in 2019. I think that could be a lot of fun, because the next dark Android book is going to be dated for 2020, just because there's no way it was going to come out this year. There's just been too many changes. And with Android Q dropping soon and that having so much different security features, I want it to kind of be up to date on that. Honestly, Android Q might be I'm worried. So, okay, real quick. And this is a fitting place to kind of mention this. So there was Project Soli. A lot of people might not remember this. Google's Project Soli, which was kind of what was the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise? It's a technology where basically a device is looking at you and you do certain motions. It's not the PlayStation iToy, but you get the idea. Where you do certain motions, and like if you twist your fingers, it turns up the volume. Okay, but it's just watching your motions. Now, beyond Android Q, there is a feature coming in, I guess it'll be Android R, that's called Aware. Now, maybe it'll get implemented in Android Q, but you're going to have probably the Pixel 5, and the Pixel 4 hasn't even come out yet. You're probably going to need the Pixel 5 to really be able to do it. Maybe it'll be on the Pixel 4. I don't know. But there's a feature in the code called Aware, which I think means that now something that smartphone providers or smartphone manufacturers are working on is a way, because they're trying, for whatever goddamn reason, they're trying to get rid of the bezel. I don't know why. I really don't get it. Nobody's complaining about the bezel. Nobody's complaining about the bezel. No one. So, in our bezel-less, notched future, to get rid of the notch, not just the bezel, but also to get rid of the notch, manufacturers are looking into how do you create a camera that can sit behind the screen. Okay, a front-facing camera that sits behind the touchscreen. I just can't see how this is actually going to work out very well, but I'm sure they're going to make some kind of argument that it does, and through AI and some other, or through machine learning and some other software trickery, they might be able to make it look like you're getting a good picture, but there's no way it'll beat a straight camera. Regardless of that, okay, I think that is a technology that's going to allow Project Soli, which will have the phone do things based upon your hand movements without you even necessarily touching the phone, will allow that to be a reality, or allow the phone to take actions based upon how you're holding it. Not by the motion sensor, but by what the camera is seeing, by what the Soli technology is seeing. Okay? That is coming, at the very least, it started in Android Q, but boy, I'll tell you, when smartphones get to that, there's just no fucking way in hell I'm going to buy a phone that has that. Thank fuck that with Android, there are such a thing as low-end phones, because in the future, that's what we're going to want, because it's just going to get, it's just, the privacy encroachment is just going to get worse. And my point in saying this is that Android Q might be the last viable version of Android that isn't going to have so much of that's going to have added in security, great security, and the ability to update the security without having to update the entire OS, even though it's kind of already possible with Android 9, with Android P, or, Android Pie. But this might be like the last version of Android, just like for a lot of people, Windows 7 is the last great version of Windows. Android Q might be the Windows 7 of Android, is my point. But I want to be able to talk about that, and if I can have a book that does that, well, then honestly, that saves me from having to write another book in the future, or rewrite significant portions of the book in the future, and I can concentrate on writing the important shit, and also potentially keeps you from having to buy, and I'll be straight with you, having to buy more copies of my book in the future, because my initial plan was for these books to come out every year. Maybe that'll change up a little bit, but regardless, in the end, it works for all of us. Okay, it's better for all of us if I wait to write about Android Q. Again, fortunately, I know my smartphone is going to get Android Q. That's part of the reason that I got an Android One Moto X4, because I knew that it would be one of the ones that would get updated to that. But that's something that's up and coming. And then, this kind of episode could end up sounding very different when we get to smartphones like that. Or, where we have to buy low-end smartphones. And who knows what apps we're going to be able to use with those. So, anyway, that's it there's a little hint at the future. But at the present, with my daily driver, there is my Android loadout for you to enjoy. And if you want to mimic some of it, hey, these are the apps that I recommend and that I use and that meet my tolerances. There are some apps here that I will never use, or some apps available in the Play Store that might do a better job than the ones I listed off that I won't use for other reasons. If I can get away with using a more open source or privacy respecting app to do the same thing, to deal with clients in the world and whatever, I'm going to do that, obviously. So here's my loadout. Anyway, I hope this is helpful for some. I appreciate the patron who asked for this, and just a nice little bit of bonus content for the Zomia ONE Underground. So I will see all of you on the other side. Plenty more to come out in June. Woo!